So I have a wealth management firm. My average client is 65 years old. I recently found out that one of my clients had stage 4 cancer. He's been with me for a year. I went to go see him. His name's John. Won't give you his last name. And I walked in and I said, John, I said, just wanted to show up. And I said, are you okay if we just talk? And he goes, yeah. He goes, are my finances in order? I said, yeah, your finances are in order. He goes, well, if you don't mind me asking, what are you doing here? And I said, to be honest, I said, I'm just here as a friend. And he goes, is there any other reason? And I said, well, I do have one other incentive. I said, if you don't mind me asking, what does your picture of God look like?
That's good.
And what it does is it opens people up not to talk about religion, but to talk about how do they see God. And he just went on, he goes, to be honest, he goes, I see God kind of like an alien.
Yeah.
He's like, I know he's out there, but I don't really know who he is.
Yeah.
He goes, I believed in him and then I got divorced. One of the things I found is a lot of people believe in God until something bad happens.
Yeah. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We got Trey Peterson in the house. Just flew in this morning. You had a delayed flight.
That's
looking
right.
sharp, man.
We made it.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I know you said you recently just bought a home out here in Frisco, so congratulations on that. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, all good stuff, right?
Yeah, we love it out here. Been coming out for 4 years, and a little over 6 months ago, bought a place in Legacy West.
Yeah.
So I was thinking lake, and then I got the shops and the restaurants, and I brought my wife, and she said, I'm thinking shopping. So
yeah, that's a cool spot.
Really good.
Here we are.
I mean, there's a
We're your
lot to
neighbor.
do out there. It's like even this little hub. You have the Star right there too, so it's a good area.
And that's where my office is actually.
Okay.
It's at the Del Star.
Oh wait, so it's at the Formation place.
It is.
Yeah, so we used to go to that place,
Nice.
and I would always see Tyler there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
good.
Good spot, right?
We like it. It's
Yeah.
a good place to get started.
Okay. Cool. Well, let's go. Before we get into the entire conversation, can you listen to a quick prayer?
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's do it. Heavenly Father, thank you again for today. Thank you for the breath in our lungs, the oxygen in our lungs, God, and the blood in our veins. And we just thank you for this opportunity, whether it reaches 100 people, 1,000, million. It's on your timing, God. It's in your will. We just want to provide value here and give you something to work with, God. And just thank you for having Trey here to really share his wisdom, his expertise, his knowledge. And hopefully this inspires people to do kingdom business, God. And we just thank you for everything we have as opposed to we don't. And just thank you, God. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, Trey. So can you just give us a quick, 60-second snapshot, who you are, what you do, so the listeners can get more context?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a beautiful wife. Her name is Stephanie. We've got 3 amazing kids.
Yep.
Cyrus, Tatum, and Cruz, 8, 6, and 4 years old. I'm a managing partner of All Things Financial. It's an 8-year-old wealth management company, so it's a home office. So we do investment, insurance, taxes, Social Security, Medicare. And then we launched an office, Elevate Life Wealth Builders, January 27th, 2025, right here in Frisco at the Formation.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of great team members, and we're just running hard. And then the third thing I do is I have a leadership and coaching company called Summit Leadership and Coaching. And it's a little over 3 years old.
Okay. Yeah, lots of different things going on. And that's where we actually met you, is at the church, Elevate Life Church. So we first saw you at Pastor Keith's Grow Day, and then you were speaking. So we're like, man, this guy's sharp. He's dropping some good nuggets. I was taking notes on my Evernote, and I was like, okay, let's get him on the podcast, awesome, when he's here in Frisco. So I appreciate your time, man. I know you're busy going back and forth, so I know this is going to be a great discussion.
And we just had to go bug him right after he stepped on stage too, right?
No, man, I love it. Yeah. I can tell right away. You were my tribe. So.
Yeah, probably these 2 twins. He's coming up and bugging me. I'm just kidding.
So good.
Yeah. So let's start off with this. I always like to open up our conversations this way. So let's just say now that you're in Frisco, I was going to say Minnesota first because that's where you're from. So let's just say the mayor of Frisco is like, Trey, I'm going to grant you billboards all over Frisco. I love what you're doing. What would be that one message that you would just want on that billboard?
I would probably put the richest guy in heaven.
Okay.
And then I'd have a subtitle on, are you trying to be rich on earth or are you wanting to be rich in heaven?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then I would have it lead into kingdom, because I think you and I are all 3 of us. We're very driven, goal-oriented. All of us are pursuing being in that top 1%.
Right.
And one of the things I think about when I think about successful people is you watch and they spend decades trying to become successful. And then once they become successful, they look empty because they can have all the things that they couldn't have that was driving them.
Right.
And so when I think about that billboard, the thing that I would want to get people's attention with is eternity, because it doesn't matter what we have here. Everything that you and I own, it's going to end up, basically it's going to end up either in a garbage can or in a dumpster, right?
Yeah, man.
Right.
And you guys probably know too, even you buy a nice car and 4 or 5 years later, you're like, man, this thing's actually wearing out.
Yeah.
You buy a beautiful home and it's your dream, and a couple years later, you're like, man, there's a lot of stuff to fix in this place.
Yeah. Right.
But when we talk about rewards in heaven, it lasts forever. So I guess my goal of the billboard would get people from thinking about today to thinking about eternity.
Yeah, that's so good. And I remember too, you had recommended a book around that. It was called
The Law of Rewards.
Yes,
Yeah.
and right when you told me that, I actually read that. So it's one of those ones where I got to read like 2 or 3 times, but it was so good because it did make me think more about just eternity than just like the time that we're here.
Well, my friends Jared Neiman, Charles Neiman, Pastor Charles Neiman, they recommended the book to me. And what amazed me is I've grown up in the church my whole life, and I had never heard the teaching on the 7 crowns in heaven and the things that we have to do here to earn them.
Okay.
And imagine how sad it would be if all of us hit, the decamillionaire and the hundreds of millions or billionaire, and we never do the things that actually make us wealthy in eternity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So good.
So anyways, thanks for reading the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Dude, I try to take action, and like if someone's like successful and they're telling me to read a book, I'm like, I'm on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. But I like that. Good message on the
You want to
billboard.
get me a copy?
No.
I'll get you a copy.
You got plenty of books.
Yeah, I got too many, man.
I love the fact that there's not just one of you that's driven and goal oriented. I mean, it'd be fun to know like what percentage of families have 2 people that have the drive that you have, that have the kingdom purpose that you have, and that you're doing it together.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard enough to get along with a sibling that's
It
a
is,
loser.
man. Yeah.
And here you guys are both winners,
Yeah.
and you're not just getting along, you're building together. So I just want to say hats off to you guys.
Thank you, man.
Because I have a business partner, and he's one of my best friends, and it's not always easy, but it's always better.
Yeah.
It
So
is.
just respect to you guys for,
Thank you, man.
for
Thank you.
building
Thank you.
together.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it takes a lot of patience to deal with this guy. And it's funny because like he's just more like type A, more serious. I'm more like relaxed, but it's a good balance as well too. But there's times, man, where I could tell you stories where we've gone at it.
Almost went through a window. So
Yeah, but you know what?
That was a
though?
long time ago.
Anybody that you're building with, you're going to go at it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if it's easy, you're probably not actually building anything, right?
Yeah,
you're right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what originally inspired you to get into like the financial industry and sector?
You know what's interesting? When I was, what would have been? I was a junior in college, so I went to Oral Roberts University. Okay. And not to get off topic, but one of the things that I would say is a lot of entrepreneurs are anti-college and education today. And what I would say is those 4 or 5 years are so important in developing yourself, developing the relationships that you're going to build. Not that I think college is for everybody, but I do think that most people, if you've got a big dream, that degree opens doors. And if you go to a right place where it's a Christian campus and it's Holy Spirit empowered, it doesn't just it's not just investing yourself for those 4 years, but it's also creating relationships that last decades.
Right.
So I guess to answer your question, so my junior year of college, I was at church, and this gentleman came up to me, and I'm 21 years old, he's 45, and his name was Leroy, and Leroy said, "Trey, what do you want to do with your life?" And I was like, "I don't know what I want to do, but I do know that I want to control my time, I want to control my income, and I want to help people."
Yeah.
And I actually learned that from Amway. When I was a little kid, my parents were in Amway, and it taught me how to dream, taught me about personal development.
Yeah.
And so this guy goes, "Well, welcome to commercial insurance." And that's what he did. So he did business insurance. He was 45 years old, making $350 grand a year, golfing 20 hours a week. And I remember thinking, I want what Leroy has. And so he got to work, and I got to work on having his company, which is called Marsh McLennan Agencies. They're actually the largest commercial insurance company in the country.
Okay.
But I was the first college grad that they hired. And I just went to work because if Leroy created the kind of wealth that he did doing commercial insurance, I knew that I could do it too. And what's interesting is the main lesson that I learned is even though I wanted the lifestyle and the income that Leroy had, what I quickly found out is I didn't love the process that Leroy loved.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've watched is there's a lot of people that fall into a career or an industry because they know somebody that's successful in that thing.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So what's interesting is, so I started in commercial insurance, and I was a wrestler in high school, football,
Okay.
wrestling, rugby. My wrestling team was number 2 in the country, so very competitive, and I had a high drive. And so when I got into a job, even though I didn't like 80 to 90% of what I did every day, my attitude was I would rather stick with it too long than quit too soon. So I did it for 2 years for Marsh, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to go do this for myself. And I went and did it for myself, and to be really transparent, I was miserable for about 3.5 years. And what made me stick with it is that I was winning. Everybody around me was like, man, you're making 6 figures. You're, second year out of college. You're breaking records. I mean, all these great things were happening.
Yeah.
And I was just so unhappy. And even though I knew that you should make a change if you were unhappy, I already felt stuck.
Yeah. But what was it specifically like that made you unhappy about the process though?
I didn't believe, it sounds really cliche, but Chris, I didn't believe that I was making a difference.
Okay.
So I would say that there's a lot of people that do insurance and they enjoy what they do.
Yeah.
But what I felt like, and this is going to sound however it's going to sound, but I felt like if I got hit by a bus, anybody could step in and do what I was doing.
Oh, okay.
And so what I wanted, because my dad's a pastor, my mom does marriage and family counseling, and she's a pastor as well. Their work made a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And they had people that probably wouldn't be married if it wasn't for their relationship with them. They had people that wouldn't be serving God. They had people that would be much worse off. So they were developing people.
Yeah.
And so I guess the biggest piece was I felt like there was no peace. I was building relationships, but I wasn't developing people.
Yeah.
And so I got a really unique time where I sold my business 18 months in. And I got to sit back and just say, if everything paid the same, what would I do?
Yeah.
And I think everybody should ask that question. Like, if everything paid the same, what would you do? Right. Now, if you love walking dogs, obviously, you can't do that and make $250,000 a year. But, think through, like, what are your gifts?
Yeah.
What are your talents? And what are the opportunities that align with those? So what I would say, Chris, is what I knew is I love people. I was good at sales. I understood finance. So when I looked at my skill set and the things that I had interest in, insurance was one of those. And I tried it and I found out it wasn't the thing. The mortgage industry was an option. Being a real estate agent was an option. And then being a financial advisor was an option. Okay. So the second thing that I tried was being a retirement planning specialist. And at that time, my picture of a financial advisor was somebody that called friends and family and sold high commission products.
Yeah.
I mean, I just thought that's not going to be it. And my wife, who honestly is way smarter than me, she goes, I think you would love this model. And it's called an education model of fiduciary financial planning. Mm-hmm. It's fee-based. You're educating people versus selling a product. And I had a friend that I really respected. And I called him and I said, Elijah, I said, I'd love to learn more about what you do. And he said, we're actually expanding. I said, I just sold my business. And he's like, are you sure you want to work for somebody? And I said, actually, I need to work for somebody. I'm burnt out on owning a business. Yeah. One thing I would say, it's not the question you asked, but building a business is hard.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And one of the things I would say to a lot of people out there is, like, if you need a break, just go do sales for a while.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's what you need to rebuild your income and kind of to get a fresh start.
Yeah. That's good.
And I did that. So I jumped in, and what's amazing is I loved going to work every day. I love teaching financial classes. I love sitting down with a single person or a couple and saying, you've spent 35, 40 years saving. Now, how do we make sure that you're invested right? How do we have a spend down plan? How do we help you with taxes? And it's almost like I was, when you're in school and you get to go do fun things, what do they call it again? Like you go to the zoo or you go to a park.
Field trips?
Field trip.
Yeah,
I felt like I was on a field trip every day.
Yeah.
I was like, this is amazing. So I went from enjoying 10% of my work doing insurance to loving 90% of my work in financial services. Yeah. So that's how I got into it. Felt like I controlled my time, controlled my income, and I helped people with money. And one of the things I found is if your and my money is in order, everything else in life is easier.
Yeah.
So when I found that I could get into a business, that I could help people have financial peace and really peace in every area, I was hooked.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into wealth management.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man.
And it's so good, man. Like with that too, that's where you guys started your guys' business, Elevate Life Wealth Management.
Right.
So why is that so important though nowadays, especially too, Trey, just that people are just financially literate and they know how to manage their finances. And I would even say too, like in a kingdom type manner as well too.
Yeah.
Stewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say what's interesting is, you guys are this way too, right? So all of us are entrepreneurial. We're sales guys. But if you look at a lot of entrepreneurs, my mom would always say, if you want to know how successful a business leader is, look to see how happy his wife is. Ooh, and one of the things my dad would always tell me, and he's just full of wisdom, but he would say, don't spend your life risking everything. And a lot of entrepreneurs do that, right? So they'll make a bunch of money and they'll lose it all. And they end up living a roller coaster life. And so what my dad always said is build a business that's your foundation and then take risks on other things. But never risk your home, never risk your wife's security, never have your wife wondering, are we going to be able to pay for the car this month? And so I think what I did is I built, basically a solid income before I took significant risks.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I would just say is if you want to know how successful a businessman is, look to see how secure and happy his wife is.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that's even this is a great talking point. It's like you had that foundation just, coming from your father, raising you with those type of principles, the values, morals, and just having that mindset he had. So, I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. I think too, the other thing I would say is, if you're a builder you're a goal person and you're
Yeah.
a visionary. And so the attitude of a lot of salespeople and entrepreneurs is, if I buy this, it'll stress me out enough to sell more. And it sounds crazy, and I think there's some truth to it.
Right.
But what I would say is that if you have a gift or a talent of creating a large income, because if you think about it, Dave Ramsey's designed really well for helping people on fixed incomes,
Right.
whether they make 40 grand a year, 70 or 120. But if you're a school teacher, you really can't afford to take a big risk.
Sure.
And that's what I do like Dave Ramsey. It's like, if you're trying to get out of debt and you've got fixed income and you can't double it just by selling more, then that's a great plan. But what I would say is, if you are somebody that has the ability to create high income and you have those gifts and talents, one of the things that you have to do that goes against your natural default, so this is me talking about me, my default is that I'm a spender. I love buying things. I love exciting moments. I've got a little bit of ADHD, and so it's really easy for me to make spontaneous decisions. And so what I would say is, you need to know what your defaults are. And when you know what your defaults are, you can walk in more discipline.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when it comes to finances, as you make more money, even though you or my wife may say she wants to drive the Escalade or wants to have the nicer house, don't do those things until you can put 30 to 50% down.
Yeah.
Delayed gratification, it sounds boring. And one of the things I've learned is, most of the wealthy friends that I have, a lot of them lived by their defaults, and they ended up making a ton of money and then at some point losing it all.
Yeah.
And it took losing it all for them to have the pain of what it feels like to not be able to pay your bills or to have a car repoed.
Yeah.
I'm thankful I never had to go through that, but I watched friends go through it. And so what I would say is, what I love about wealth management is the education of teaching people how to live well and to be the turtle instead of the hare.
Yeah. And how do you guys teach your clients and educate them to have that discipline and that consistency? Because saving money, putting it away in different buckets, right?
Right.
That takes discipline.
It does. Oh, and I would say too, at Elevate Life Wealth, my business partner is Pastor Keith Kraft,
Right.
Tyler Sheridan, Johnny Zell. So Pastor Keith, one of the things he teaches really well is stewardship.
Right.
And so the principle that he teaches is what we teach our clients. So 70% of your income is what you live on.
Yeah.
10% is the tithe. 10% is what you put away for your savings or retirement. And then 10% is offerings, depending on the year. As you're getting started, it might be more 2 to 4%.
Right.
There's some flexibility in there. But if you can work towards living on 70, giving 10 to your church, investing 10 for yourself, and then that other 10, depending on the season, it's either going into your business or it's offerings. That's what we teach people.
Yeah,
and I think one of the things I really appreciate about Keith Kraft is that he's not just teaching people budgets, he's teaching people to think larger and in margins.
Margins,
And
yeah.
so one of the things that we teach is margins. And so I think the reason why I love talking about money is because one of my favorite things to ask people is, when I say the word money, is your response inside positive or negative?
Yeah.
So if you just pause, is money a positive word or is it a negative word? And one of our missions is to turn money into a positive word for you, for your spouse. When you sit down to talk about money at the table, my wife and I have no problem talking about money because we've put money away. We've got multiple businesses, but it hasn't always been that way, right?
Yep.
So I think what happens is, most people come from money being a negative word.
Right.
It was fought over. There was never enough. There was more month than money at the end of the month. And so if you can learn how to live in margins and have a great life, you're going to have a great life that way. You're also going to have a great marriage. You're also going to have a great relationship with your kids.
Absolutely. And I also think that goes too with people always speaking in statements, right? That are just very negative. So oh, I can't afford this. I'll never be able to afford this. This is just way out of my budget. Those are all very negative statements that you're speaking into existence. And even to what you said about the energy thing, even with tithing, right? Do you get excited to tithe, or are you like, man, I got to give 10% to God?
No, I mean, I'll tell you actually. So I grew up, my parents are pastors, I said, but I think a lot of times, I'm going to come back to that, but it's tied in. I think one of the reasons why a lot of Christians' kids don't serve God is because they hear their parents talk about the tithe or talk about walking in obedience, but a lot of their parents don't tithe. So they don't see the blessing from it. So I think what ends up happening is it appears to a lot of people that the world has more to offer than God does.
Got it.
My parents lived in a way where they not only tithed, they were generous, but they invested well.
Yeah.
And money was a positive thing in our household.
Yeah.
So because of the way that my parents lived, I decided, man, I don't want to live in the world. And I'm far from perfect, but I've served God my whole life,
Yeah.
saved myself for marriage and all the good things, right? But the reason is every day I thought, man, I don't want to miss out on the blessing that God has for my life. And I think if you and I can raise our kids to see that serving the world costs more than serving God, they're going to want to do that too.
It's good. Yeah. It's so good, man.
Yeah.
Because like, for example, like our dad, so he was a correctional officer at San Quentin State Prison.
Wow.
And he passed away when we were 17, when we were seniors in high school. And it's like, he didn't talk enough about like just money, like the positivity about it to like bring that to the household. You know, he wasn't somebody that was like, you know, super like negative about it, but it wasn't like talked about enough to where like it's a positivity type of conversation in the family. Mm-hmm. And I can see how that could be such a big game changer, because we struggled a lot for a lot of years with like money and just like, you know, it doesn't grow on trees, like super frugal, like don't invest, you know what I mean? Credit card debt, stuff like that, you know?
Well, that's where I do believe in Dave Ramsey, because most people make enough not to be financially stressed, right? I mean, when you get started, it's hard. Like your first 5 years, no matter how gifted you are, you're probably going to be broke. Like I remember coming out of college and I was like, I'm going to be rich so fast. And I remember working so hard thinking, why does it take so much work to be broke? You know, but I think those are the stages of life that they're exciting. And one of the things that I would always tell myself is, if I can outwork the people around me, I'm going to make it.
Right.
And so I think the hard times are just to get rid of the losers, you know, and they're really to build character, to develop us. But I think if we can make positive a money word for our kids, I think what we do is we set them up to not spend their lives living 30 days behind, but instead living ahead.
Yeah.
Growing up, not to keep going back to this, but it's important. My dad would always say, just a little bit of discipline is the difference of always being behind or always being ahead.
That's good, man.
Yeah. It's important though, because I mean, even there's a lot of like fathers, you know, young fathers listening to this, and it's just like, if they can get some nuggets like this and wisdom to like start shifting that and speaking good stuff into their kids' lives, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say, what would you say to just like you know, an entrepreneur that's kingdom minded, right? But they have some sort of fear or like limiting beliefs around just like, you know, getting some credit card debt to be able to like invest in their business and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say it's kind of interesting, because when you're on a platform, whether it's a stage or whatever, you're supposed to give advice that's good for everybody. Well, if you look at, you know, 2025, right? So we're December of 2025. If you go on social media, you've got all these guys like Grant Cardone and Robert Kiyosaki and guys that I like, but here's what I don't like. They're telling the masses that everybody should work for themselves,
Right.
that everybody should be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think one of the mistakes that we've made in media is that we've elevated the entrepreneur above everybody else. And what's crazy is, as a retirement planning advisor, I work with a ton of business owners, and I can tell you that a lot of them would have had way more money saved and better lives had they worked for somebody.
I agree, man.
So I think the first thing that we have to do is we have to quit elevating being an entrepreneur, because there are entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs.
Sure.
And one of the things I've watched so many people that are a great number 2 person or a great number 3 person, and they go from making $250,000 a year but wanting to make $500,000 a year. They go work for themselves and they make $80,000 a year, and then they run everything into the ground.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is you have to know yourself. You got to know, am I an entrepreneur? And then if you're going to take a risk, take a calculated risk.
Yes.
I don't think anybody should ever quit their job until they have a business that has at least 12 months of income that matches your job. So one of my favorite things is, one of the things I love telling people is, if you want to be a winner, you need to grow your capacity. So what does that mean? I've watched all of these people. They'll go be making $250 a year. They'll start a side business that makes 10 grand the third month. And they're like, man, if I gave this business all of my time, I'd be making way more than I do at work. So they quit their job that has health benefits and a consistent paycheck, which, by the way, our wives care way more about consistent paychecks than they do the big deal that we're telling them that's coming. Can I just be honest about that?
Dude, that's so true.
So what I would say is, if you're somebody that wants to take a risk, don't stop your job. In fact, one of the things I found is most high achievers, they can do their full-time job in 25 to 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
But let's say that you're someone that it takes 40. Keep going with your job 40 hours a week. and build a business on the side 10 to 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
Someone might go, well, I don't have the capacity for that. Well, then you probably shouldn't be a business
Exactly.
owner.
Yeah.
So when I started my business, I actually went and got a consulting job with a guy that for 6 months, he paid all of my marketing. He paid my mortgage. He didn't know he was paying my mortgage, but through the fee he was giving me. Yeah. And I was putting 40 some hours a week into my business and 20 some into his. And that's what allowed me to go do it and give my wife the security to make it happen. Yeah. So a lot of the guys I know that have been successful, when they talk about the risk they took, most people shouldn't go do that. Yeah. Only 4% of the population are actually built to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's good. I agree. Really good advice. Yeah.
It's so glorified and just like put on a pedestal to where it's just like win, win, win. It's like the new American dream. And it's like people just don't understand what they get themselves into. Even us, to where it's like we coach like predominantly, health and fitness coaches. And we tell them too, like, don't quit your job right away. Like build this business for a year solid and just, then go from there, because you don't even know if you have what it truly takes to go all in on this thing.
Yeah. Here's the other thing I would say, though, is if you're around people and you're in your 20s or your 30s and they're talking about building this great business so they can retire to travel and be on the beaches of the world together, I'm like, why would you want to retire in your 20s or your 30s?
Yeah.
If you just think about it, what you're really talking about is something I've never seen anybody do. And if you could, the kind of people that can make the kind of money to do that can't sit on the beach for more than a day or two anyways.
Right.
So what I would say is you need to decide that your 20s and your 30s and your 40s are your building years.
Yes.
These are the years that you should be working 60, 70 hours a week. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that you don't have a day that's your rest day. I'm not saying that you don't work in your family time. What I am saying is that when your kids are young, you should be building so that when they're in sports, you don't miss a game.
Yeah.
You should be building so that when your kids are getting married, that you can be there to travel with them, that you can be there to help them with their grandkids.
Exactly.
So if you're hanging around people that they're trying to retire in their 20s and 30s, I'd say you're hanging out with the wrong people.
Yeah. So you're saying, Trey, it's not possible to make residual income?
No,
like everybody wants.
I'm actually saying it's possible to make it. What I am saying is most companies that talk about it don't have it.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what else, though? I'm going to say this. So I'm in financial services. One of the reasons I chose it is because there's residual income and there's bonuses. But here's what people don't talk about. What comes with residual income? Residual work.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, if you've got somebody like me where you manage $100 million a year, I manage more than that, but let's use that as an example. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, at 1%, that's $1 million a year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you've got $1 million a year coming in, guess what happens if you go live on the beach for a year? Well, you're going to lose all your clients.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have to service those clients. You have to take care of those clients. So I believe that residual income is real.
Yeah.
What I don't think is real is the idea that you can build a business and that you can spend 5-6 years running hard, and that all these people that are following you are going to watch you go sit on the beach and they're going to keep working hard.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen is when you have a business, whether it's the mortgage business or wealth management or real estate, your team is going to do what you do.
Exactly.
And here's the other piece is if you slow down and you've got A players, guess who's not staying with you?
Yeah.
The A players.
Exactly.
The reason why A players stay with you is because you can do things they can't do, and they still want to learn from you.
Absolutely. Exactly. And that was my whole point where I'm like I do believe you can do that, but it's like I get so many people saying like, I just want to make money in my sleep. I'm like, yeah, like that's going to take some time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Well, yeah, I think what you need to do, this is important, and it goes back to the question of how did I find what I wanted to do. Yeah. I think you genuinely need to know what your gifts and talents are.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've got a friend that was an engineer, and he had 4 or 5 friends that were financial advisors, and he wanted the income they had and the control of the time they had. Mm-hmm. He left engineering, went into financial services, and he went from an A player in engineering to a C player in financial services. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is you can't just decide what you want to do based on the people around you.
Right.
You have to look to say, do they have the same skills that I have? Do they have the same desire in their everyday work that I have? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of pieces to getting the right alignments, as we would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, it's good.
So good, man. We can keep going on this, but I really want to switch gears here and talk about some gold that you dropped at Grow Day back in June. Yeah. So I'm going to read a couple of these, Trey, and then if you can just elaborate off of them, because it's like pure gold, man. So the first one is you said you recommend having a spiritual/life coach and an industry coach. Can you kind of just like elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I'm somebody that believes in coaching. Not only do I have a leadership and coaching company, last year I spent, $60,000 on different coaches. Mm-hmm. And what I tell people is you should have a business coach, somebody that is specifically giving you high-level wisdom. You should have an industry coach. So for me, my business coach, I'll just say this, is Keith Kraft. Right. And what I love about Pastor Keith Kraft is that he could step into any business and give wisdom because he's a great leader. He's a leadership guy. But then I have an industry coach. So there's a gentleman in Minnesota. His name is Tom Wade. And Tom Wade is out of Plymouth, Minnesota. And what I love about Tom Wade is while he's built a successful retail shop, he actually doesn't have the biggest business. I probably know 10 guys closely that have a larger business than he does. But what I love is that when people talk about him, they talk about him in a way that he puts people first. He puts money second. And when I think about what I want my future to look like, I want people to talk about me the way they talk about him. Yeah. So the reason I have him is he's in my industry. He can give me specific wisdom for financial services and specifically retirement planning. Yeah. And then I've got a spiritual leader, which is my dad. So my dad is my pastor. And what's really cool is he's got a great mind for business. And like Pastor Keith, they actually both play a role on the business side and the spiritual side. Yeah. But one of the things I think that I was pointing out to people is you're going to get coaching somewhere. So if you're going to get it from someone, don't just look at what's best about them, look at what's weak about them. Because when you have a mentor, it's kind of like a friend. You don't just pick up the best of them, you pick up the worst of them. And so one of the things I would tell people is if you have core values, and if you're a Christian and you want to be faithful to your wife, and you want to be a great father to your kids, and you want to put the kingdom first, your coach needs to be somebody that's in the kingdom and also is a spiritual leader. Yeah. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with learning from people in the world. You know, there's all kinds of people on YouTube that I'm watching their videos because they're full of wisdom, but then they say things and I'm like, man, that guy needs Jesus. So, but what I would say is make sure that you're getting in rooms where when you're out to dinner and a beautiful waitress walks up, the guy next to you isn't hitting on her. Right. He's talking about how much he loves his wife of 10 and 15 and 20 years.
It's so good, man.
Because whether you like it or not, you and I become like the people we hang out with. And I want to hang out with people that are in love with their wife.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit on this right here because this was really good what you said. Don't chase the fruit that someone has, chase the process they have grown through. So that kind of piggybacks off that. Can you elaborate that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really common for us to, everybody wants to be the rich guy's friend. Right. And so one of my clients, he's a plumber, super successful. One day I asked him, I said, Mark, how did you decide to go into plumbing? And I said, you didn't know anybody that did it, you said. And he goes, well, he didn't have a family member that was in it. So he said, I grew up in a trailer park. My family was poor. We never had anything. He said, but I had a friend and they had a nice house. And every time I went to his house, there was something that amazed me. And I was like, what amazed you? He said his fridge was always full. And I said, what does your dad do? And he goes, my dad's a plumber. And he goes, that's how I chose to go into plumbing. Yeah. So when I go back to that, what I would say is don't just hang out with people because they have the real estate and the cars and the beautiful wife that you want. Hang out with people that they have the process that has the same giftings as you, but they also are living their life in a way that's kingdom and not worldly, not secular. Yeah. I mean, you know this. How many successful business leaders are on their second, third, and fourth wife?
Oh, dude, too many.
And it's too many. And here's what's actually crazy. I'll say it this way. A lot of these guys, when they hit their 60s, I've talked to them. They're worth tens of millions, some of them more than that. And I've always thought, man, Joe's 65 and his wife is 45. He's got a 20-year younger wife, and she's a trophy wife, right? Yeah. And I would say that most of the men I've had these conversations with, like when we've gone deep, because I love going into deep conversations, almost all of them have said to me, as great as so-and-so is, I miss the conversations with the person I built my life with. Yeah. And almost all of them would take their first wife back. Yeah. And so what I would say is that, don't just chase the fruit that people have in their finances. Look at the fruit of their whole life. Yes. Yeah. Don't just get into an industry because somebody has the car, the house that you want. Look at the process and say, is this what God's called me to do? And then even, when I got into wealth management, I started with a group of friends that were great mentors. And about 2 years in, the Holy Spirit, I was at a Christmas party hanging out with my best friends. And there was, like 15 plus advisors. And I loved working there every day. And we're at the Christmas party and I'm looking around the room and I felt like the Lord said, this isn't your room anymore. Wow, okay. And it was the nudge I needed to start my own business. But part of that is what I would say is there's also seasons in life. You know, so like we've heard from Pastor Keith Craft that some friends are for a lifetime, some are for a reason, some are for a season, some are for a lifetime on friends.
Yep.
But I also think that work can be that way.
Yeah.
I think that you want to have a stick-to-itiveness about you, that you're known to be a builder and not a mover. But when God tells you to move, you should move.
Yeah. So good, man.
Yeah,
Jeez. Say, pour some water on that mic.
Let's go. Come on.
There's one more point too that you mentioned at Grow Day, and you said get good at plagiarizing what successful people do.
Yeah, I mean, my wife always says, don't say that because it makes it sound like you don't think highly of yourself.
No,
But
I know.
No, I mean about me. So here's what I'm saying is that I would say that my gifting is plagiarism.
Yeah. And it's like that word could sound bad because they say in school, don't plagiarize people's stuff. But I know what you mean.
It's as long as you have permission, right? So like
Yeah.
when I think about my team, so I've got 4 advisors on my team between Minnesota and Dallas. When one of my guys comes to me and goes, I just want to do it the way you do it, I'm like, thank God. He's going to not make any shortcuts. I know what works. He sees what works. And so my whole life, all I've done is I've said, I might not be able to pick up that book and learn what he learned, but if I could go spend a week with him, I can do what he does.
Right.
So what I would say is you don't have to be that smart in life, but you do have to be teachable and coachable.
Yep.
And one of the things that I've learned is most people are not teachable. You know, the test of you being teachable is when you go ask a leader in your life or a coach in your life what to do, and you don't agree with the advice, do you do it anyways?
Right.
And I would say what most people do is your natural default, and mine too, is to go, well, I'm going to find somebody else successful and ask them.
Yeah.
And whoever tells me to do what I was going to do anyways, then I'll agree with that person.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I would say is if you can get good at finding people that are successful and watching and seeing what they do and plagiarizing it with their permission, that's the best way to success. So for me in wealth management, I started as an associate advisor with one of the top financial advisors in the Midwest. And what I would do is I wouldn't just do my job, but I would sit in all of his meetings, which, by the way, was not part of my job. So my first year of marriage, I was working 12, 14-hour days because I would stay late to sit in these meetings.
Yeah.
And I thought I would build with him for decades and maybe forever. It ended up not being that. But the 2 years that I worked for him, I actually made the least amount of money I've ever made. That's another story. But here's what I told myself. There are 2 different types of seasons. There are learning seasons and there are earning seasons.
Good.
And a lot of people in their 20s and 30s don't stick around long enough in the learning to get to the earning years.
good.
They jump around, they look for the next thing, they chase shiny objects. So I would say find somebody that's extremely successful. I've seen a lot of guys in real estate. They go become their own broker. And I'm like, do you know what it costs you to not be in an office with 10 other high achievers? I'm like, give away part of the commission because the network that you're building, the things that you're learning your first 10 to 12 or 15 years are so significant. And I think people underestimate the learning years.
Yeah.
And I spent years and years learning. And then I would go home and I would read books, sales, communication, leadership. And what's shocking to me is most people don't read.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. When I was young, I was like, why don't people go home and do more?
Yeah.
And then I had kids and I'd go home and I was like, well, this is why you're exhausted, right?
Yeah.
But then I would go, okay, well, if I don't want to be average, I have to do what others don't do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I read and I listen. And when I'm working out, I don't listen to music.
Yep.
I'm not against listening to music.
Yeah.
But I don't get better listening to music.
Yeah,
So what
go
do I
on a
do?
podcast
I listen to great preaching. I listen to a great podcast. And every day I'm getting 2 or 3 hours of different things inside of me. And so then people will go, how do you know all this? And I'm like, I'm just plagiarizing.
Yeah.
I spent the morning listening and I'm spending tonight telling you what I learned this morning.
Yeah. And I think that's so good, but and you make a good point too, right? Because it's like we can all consume all this stuff, but I think the problem with a lot of people too, right? It's like there's no implementation. If there's no implementation, there's no transformation. So we can consume. There's so much stuff now, but it's like people have an implementation problem.
Well, here's what I would say too is 100%. And I think that's the difference between like being somebody that consumes versus somebody that creates.
Right.
So being a consumer by itself will never earn you any money. It'll never help you build anything.
Yep.
So what I would say in relation to that is if you love reading books, decide that if you normally read 1 or 2 books a month, Next year, instead, you're going to read half as many books, but you're going to write one.
Exactly.
John Maxwell has a great quote. He goes, your first book is going to suck, so you might as well just get it out of the way. And I'll tell you, I'm in the middle of writing my first book, and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like I'll give it to people, but not my friends, because they'll think less of me. That's how I feel about my book. But what I know is that I'm in the learning season of being an author.
Yeah.
My leadership and coaching company, it's, a little over 2 years old, 3 years old. And when I think about the skills that I have there, like there's God-given gifts that I think I can develop, and someday I'll be good at that. But I look at it now and I'm like, I'm so much better at wealth management than I am leadership and coaching.
Yeah.
But I've been doing wealth management for 12 years.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I've been doing leadership and coaching as far as a business for 2.5, 3 years. And so I think too, as you're building your life and you add new things, you have to be okay sucking for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
And most people, they can't get past that.
Pride.
And I think if you go into sales too, the other good thing is you get told no every day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And what it does is it helps you decide that you don't care what anybody thinks.
Yeah, it also
in a healthy way.
Yeah, and it helps with your level of conviction no matter what.
It does.
Sales is so powerful, and it's like we teach that to a lot of our coaches, and it's like they don't know how to sell for who it's rough sometimes, but it's like once we do see them actually doing the sets and reps, learning the skill, it's like you see the confidence, the conviction, and just like they're like completely different people, which is beautiful.
I would say in relation to what you're saying too, though, let's say that you have a great coach that's a great fitness trainer, right? That's coaching with you, and they're a great practitioner. So they're great at teaching and helping people, but they suck at sales.
Yeah.
That person should consider partnering with somebody that's great at sales.
Yeah.
So I think about my wealth management firm, and my business partner, his name's Yeldis A. Coots. We met at Oral Roberts University in 2007, and he's operations, systems, processes, managing people. I hate all of those things.
Yeah.
What I love about my partnership with him is that he makes me look better than I actually am. What he loves about his relationship with me is that he hates sales. He actually, I think, hates people. I say that jokingly, but he would rather be in the back room doing what I would say are actually the hard things.
Yeah.
Where like when I see a client out at a grocery store, I will go out of my way because I can't wait to see that person.
Yeah.
Where he's going to dive into the freezer before he says hello, right? So, but what I would say is you have to know your strengths.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't have a Yeldis, then I would bring in all this business, but we wouldn't keep it.
Yeah.
Because I'm terrible at systems. I'm terrible at processes. I might be the only wealth manager in the country that has never filled out an application.
Yeah.
And I've never filled one out because on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a -4.
Yeah.
So if you also have big dreams, but you're aware of your gaps,
Sure.
ask yourself, can I hire this out? Or do I need somebody that's bought in at a level that they're not leaving and who would qualify to be a business partner?
Yeah.
So I think those alignments are so significant, and so many people try to do everything alone.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, how many people do we see on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and it's like, they're a business owner and a model and they own a shoe company. And you're like, dude, you have 5 things that all have no revenue.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what I would also say is like, don't put CEO on the door if you're not making $250,000 a year.
Exactly.
Like put that you're the associate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Put that you're the plumber, right? I mean, like, don't fall in love with titles. Fall in love with learning, because if you invest your time in learning, then you'll have some earning seasons.
Yeah.
Really,
So
really good.
man.
Yeah.
And you talked about too, like, you use some of the time like during your day while you're working out and stuff like that to consume, right, and get information. But like, just let's say that you're in Minnesota for like maybe 2 to 4 weeks, like you have no travel coming up, no big obligations. Like, what is kind of like the daily rituals, systems, and principles like look like at a high achiever, like high drive that you have?
So one of the things I would talk about is rhythm and margin. So in life, it's really important. Some people call it a schedule, but mine is a rhythm. And Pastor Keith talks a lot about that. What's interesting is I've always lived my life that way. So the difference is a rhythm is I'm going to do the same things every day, but not necessarily always in the same order. And for me, it's nice to have the flexibility, but I'm still going to get them done. So when I started my business 8 years ago, I told my business partner, we're only going to work with people that we want to work with. Mm-hmm. And normally when you get started, you work with everybody that breathes and has money because you have to.
Right.
And I go, we're only going to work with people that we want to work with so that we love what we do. I'm also probably not going to come into the office before 10 a.m. Now, the first year I did because you had to. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I'm going to spend from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. with my wife, my kids, personal development, and my workout.
Yeah.
And so my rhythm, because you get up and everyone's like, you should be up at 4 a.m. You should be,
that's a whole
at the office at 5 a.m. And for me is I've got a great rhythm. Now, if I get in at 10 or 10:30, I'm also there till 8 or 8:30 or 9. But my rhythm would be, I start my day by wrestling my kids. They normally climb into our bed in the morning. They're not allowed in there at night, which, by the way, if you want a great marriage, is a good rule of thumb. Kick those kids out of that bed. Also, you might not have any more kids if you leave them in your bed.
I agree. Love it.
So number 2, so I'll start the day with my kids and my wife. Then I go and I've got 2 German Shepherds. I'm a big dog guy.
Nice.
Love these dogs. So I 4-wheel golf cart to get them exercise, and I run with them. And then I get on my workout, listen to personal development, go into my office. Typically, my Mondays are administrative days. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are wealth management appointments, whether it's servicing clients or a sales appointment. I teach 4 financial classes a month, so about 60 classes a year, so it's a little more than that. And then Fridays are normally like half days. Now, I would say Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, I'm on my computer a lot. I'm building financial plans. I'm reviewing them. But that's kind of my rhythm. My Monday is an administrative day. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are wealth management days.
Yeah.
And then Friday is kind of reserved for the things that matter most.
Okay, gotcha, man. And then like you start like at 10 and you shut it down a little bit later like that, and then
Yeah. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, I would say I'm from like 10 to 8:30.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm always like fascinated, like just like people that like have high drives like yourself and people we've interviewed as well too. Like, what does that look like? What are some of the secret things, like system-wise habits, rituals that get them to play offense and win? You know,
I think the key is to build your team around you.
Yeah.
So I think about even like I've got an associate and he gets paid really well, and I pay him, way more than most people pay for that position. But the reason I do that is because my time matters more than that money.
Yeah.
So the other thing that you have to decide if you want time freedom, because a lot of people go, man, I want the time freedom you have. And I'm like, okay, we'll give up some of your income. They're like, oh, I can't do that. Yeah. So, so to me, you have to decide what you want.
Yeah.
And what I wanted was control of my time. Now, one thing I would say in relation to rhythm is that if you're entrepreneurial, like talking about taking risk, here's a key that's really important. And a lot of entrepreneurs miss this, is you can have seasons where you're stretching and you're working 60, 70 hours a week and you're taking some financial risk, but you can't always live that way.
right.
So what you have to know is, am I going into a season of stretching or a season of margin? And a lot of salespeople, a lot of business people, they burn out because they live stretching their whole life. And so one of the things I've told my wife, Steph, and we've lived this way, but if we've had a serious season of stretching, next year, we're going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 months and we're going to live in margin. So what does that mean? If I took all of the money that we had in savings and I started another business and we're stretching for that, so we're living under a budget because I just started a new office, so you're putting more money towards those things. Once the revenue hits a certain point, then I'm going to keep our savings at X amount of dollars, and I'm not going to take another risk for a while so that we have seasons of margin.
Yeah. Good.
So what I would say to people is you should have quarterly sit downs with your spouse. Talk about what do our finances look like? What does the schedule look like? Yep. You should look at schedule every Sunday night, in my opinion. But quarterly, you should talk about finances. And then you should talk about, are we in a season of stretching or margin?
That's good.
But if you're always living stretching, you're going to burn your wife out. And you're going to have a second wife, whether you want it or not.
Is there diminishing returns too if you live like the opposite though, like in margins all the time too?
Oh, 100%. I actually have a great example. So I've got a friend, I won't say his name because he might listen to this, but he called me a few years ago. He might be okay with me telling it. And he goes, my wife's dad is living with us. And he's in terrible health and he's been living with us for 2 years. And he's like, basically, he's taken over the house and we're miserable. And he's like, I feel like we're watching my father-in-law die. And I hate to say that because we love him and we're doing it. We're paying for his stuff. We're taking care of him, but it's basically ruining our lives.
Right.
And he goes, I'm thinking about, buying a bigger house. What do you think? So this was in 2021. And I go, you should go buy the bigger house. And I said, but I do have a question for you. I said, if you have to stretch for that house for a while, is it worth stretching to have it now? Or is the stress too much and you would rather wait till later? And he goes, no. He goes, I think it'd be smart to do it now. So I said, well, let's pray that God brings the right house. And he loved his neighborhood, in your neighborhood or near your neighborhood. And he's like, well, there's nothing in our neighborhood. I said, let's just pray that there's something. I said, God knows. So we prayed, calls me a couple weeks later. He goes, in our neighborhood, the nicest house came up for sale that I didn't even know that was there because it's so private. Yeah. And he's like, I think it was like twice as big.
Yeah.
And he goes, but it's a little more money than we want to spend. And I go, do it anyways. I go, interest rates are low. I said, it's going to buy you more of what you want, where it had a mother-in-law suite, so his father-in-law could stay there. Yeah. And so he goes, well, I just don't know. I go, make an offer, but make a reasonable offer. He makes an offer. They take the offer. So now they have a contingent deal, right?
Yeah.
So then he lists his house, and he lists it like 15% above what it's worth. And I said, hey, so-and-so, I said, there's faith, and then there's choosing for this not to happen. And he goes, well, I just feel like if it's God, it'll sell for that. Mm-hmm. But here's what it was. So he put his house at that, and nobody ever even came to look at it. What he decided is that the stretching wasn't worth the house. But he had spent so many years doing that here we are 4 years later, and they're still living in the small house. And he has told me that they should have went for it. They should have bought the big house. Yeah. So the other side is if you're always living in margins, be okay knowing that everyone's going to pass you up.
Yeah. Right.
And whatever dreams you have, not only may they not be delayed, they may never happen.
Yeah.
So that's why seasons of stretching and margin are important.
It's a great
and I love
story.
your question, man. What happens if you're always in margin?
Yeah.
Well, what happens
like
is
that, you know?
what happens is you're always going to have a small life.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what if I like a small life? Here's what I would say to that.
fear, though.
You're selfish.
Yeah.
If it's okay just to have a small life, it means that you don't have big enough goals for giving.
Yeah. It's fear. It's wanting
It is.
certainty. It's wanting guarantees, and we don't live in a life like that.
Man,
Yeah.
I think it's great. Just don't be around me.
Same here, man. I can't stand when people want a bunch of certainty, a bunch of guarantees and stuff.
What does God say about that, though? Right? Let's take
Yeah.
the parable of the talents.
Yeah.
5 talents, 3 talents,
Yeah.
1 talent. So the guy with 5 risked it all. The guy with 3 risked it all. What were they done? What happened? They were rewarded.
Yeah.
The guy with 1 talent goes, I don't want to make my master angry.
Yep.
I'm going to bury it in the ground.
Yeah.
He delivers that a year later, whatever it is, and goes, look, I protected your talent. And what is, in the example, what does the king say? He goes,
Got angry.
you wicked and lazy servant.
Yeah.
I'm taking away your talent. I'm giving it to the guy that risked it all.
Yeah.
So
Okay, more faith.
you got to stretch.
Yeah.
And you need to get around people that have stretched and been successful. Because
good.
what it does is if I'm in a room and I haven't succeeded at this level and I see you win and I see you win, Chris and Eric, I'm going to go, you know what? If Chris and Eric can do it, I think I can do it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what it does, it gives you faith that if I know somebody that did it, I can do it too. And so I would just say is if you're not dreaming big and living big, you're in the wrong rooms.
100%.
And if you're always living by margin, not only are you not going to be happy, but it may be that when you get to heaven, if you get there, not related to that, right? But God might say, you wicked and lazy servant, you never took a risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, that
That's
would
so
not be
good,
good. You mentioned Pastor Keith earlier too, and something he says that I really like too is that you can have anything you want in life, but what are you willing to sacrifice? There's got to be a sacrifice or something of a cost. So
Yeah.
I want to know, like with all the success you've had, and you're still young, man, to where it's like, what have you had to really sacrifice? Just if it was mentally, emotionally, spiritually, just financially.
Yeah. I think I just told my wife this the other day. So I said, I graduated from college in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I got my first career about 6 months later, January of 2012. But I would say from 2012 until 2023, I felt like I was in a sprint.
Mm-hmm.
I even asked my wife, I would say, what would you say is the happiest I've ever been? And she was like, this year. And I said, wouldn't you agree that I've never worked harder than I worked this year? And she goes, yeah. She goes, the more chaos, the happier you are. But here's what I would say is that I finally, for the first time 2 years ago, got to a spot where I didn't feel like I was behind. One of the things that's in somebody that is called to greatness, not just greatness in business, but greatness as a husband, greatness for the kingdom of God. When you have that desire, there's something in you that says you're behind. And I actually don't think it's negative. I think it's there to push you to push harder.
Yeah. Yep.
And one of the things that Pastor Keith Craft talks about is it's that not tensity. What does he call that? The tension.
Yeah.
And it's a good tension. And I would say for 10 years, 12 years, I lived with this tension that when I laid in bed at night, I'm like, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
When I got up in the morning, I'm like, I got to do it. And I don't think it's negative. I think that it can be if you don't decide that I can only control what I can control.
Yeah.
That took me a long time to learn. My mentor would always say, don't be stressed. You can only control what you can control. And I'm like, wow, that sounds really nice. How do you do that?
Right.
You know, and I'll tell you, it took me 3-4 years out of college to get to the point where I could live with tension, but also like be present.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I would say that I spent 12 years grinding is what everybody would say.
Right.
And I think it was really hard. I think that all the time, I would say often I wasn't present, you know, which is difficult. And I tried really hard. But it took 12 years of grinding to be proud of what I've built. And I've not arrived by any means.
Right.
But we've hit a lot of our dream goals and things. And so when you have some of those things happen, it's like, okay, it helps you to be more present.
Yeah, I love that. And it's just, that's what's so fascinating, man, about like just entrepreneurship and just being someone that's very driven and a high achiever. It's just like, when is it enough? You know, I feel like when you said you feel like behind, you know, it's just like,
Spoke to me.
geez, you know, it's like, but it's like, you know, you have to stop and smell the roses. You have to be present and just kind of like, just be like, man, I can't just keep running myself to the ground.
One of the things that helped me, I'll just say this, is when I was trying to figure out my lane and then I was trying to figure out my tribe, is I stayed plugged in at my church.
Yeah.
And what really helped me is I thought, even in my wandering, and wandering's not always bad as long as you have somebody in your life that you'll listen to when they have advice. Because when you're wandering, you're looking for your lane.
Yeah.
And one of the things that helped me in the 12 years that I felt like I was living with this tension that I couldn't sleep a lot of nights is that I was serving at my church, I was tithing at my church, and I was giving. And I was like, even when my effort in business didn't feel fruitful, I knew that I was being fruitful for the kingdom of God.
Yeah, it's good.
And it gave me a foundation and a rock to go, whether my industry has a great year or a down year, I'm winning because I'm serving in the house of God.
So good.
Dude,
And so I would just say to people that in the middle of your wandering, stay plugged into your church, stay close to your pastor, keep giving, keep serving. Don't tell yourself, I'm going to serve more at church when I hit this income level, because you'll never do it. Serve more today. Grow your capacity. And I would say that's what helped me kind of continue to pursue with tension success.
Very good.
Right there, man.
Yeah.
That's like kingdom, like that's like the perfect definition, in my opinion, of like kingdom business right there. Like that mindset right there, like literally like leading like that. That's so good, man.
When you think about, you know, what does the Bible say? The Bible says that to God, our life is just like a second. You know, it's so quick. And so one of the things I love about giving to my church is that I'm storing up riches in heaven forever.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think one of the things too that we all deal with, it's like, if you're into cars, right? I'm into cars. I love cars. It's so easy to spend $40,000 on a car, $50,000 on a car, $100,000 on a car. And then you go to church and it's like, have you written out a $10,000 check yet? Have you written out a $20,000 check yet? Have you written out a $25,000 check, $50,000 check? And so one of the things I would say too is make sure that in your giving that you don't just have income goals, but that you have giving goals.
Yeah, I like
remember
You
that.
know,
said
like,
that
does
at
your
Go
spouse know what your giving goal is? And I'm not talking about your tithe. Like, your tithe, that 10% is easy once you've started doing it, because you know you're not giving anything, you're returning it.
Right.
So when I was in college, I worked valet. And what I loved about working valet is you get cash.
Yeah.
So I would, you'd make like 20 some bucks an hour. So I'd go home every weekend. I'm making like $300-400. Well, my friends are like managing shoe stores, making $11 an hour, and I'm driving Porsches making $27 an hour. But in college, I was a spender because I'm a sales type person.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would drive to my church on Saturday morning, or Sunday morning you're at church, but Saturday morning or Friday night, and I would take my cash and I would put it in an offering and I would stick it in there so I couldn't spend my tithe.
That's awesome.
And so I would say is, if you're somebody that your natural default is, I've always lived on everything that comes in, the tithe actually is before you pay your bills.
Yeah.
It sounds scary.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But one of the things I've watched is, if we put God first, it's not just a good thing to say. By the way, I'm not a pastor that gets paid to be on staff for saying this. I have watched it in my life, is that if we give our tithe first, that 90% literally lasts longer and goes further than if we steal from
So
God.
true.
I agree
So true.
100%.
What's next for Trey Peterson? Like what's in the works? Like, what are you excited about going into 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that's important is you have to have like a life mission statement.
Yeah.
So you've heard this, but you should be committed to a mission, but not necessarily committed to like an industry or a job. And so when I was 12 years old, most 12-year-olds, their dream is to be in the NFL or the NBA. And I'm 12 years old. I'm at an Amway meeting with my parents. And I hear John Maxwell say something that forever has stuck with me. And he said, there is no greater call than the call to the development of people. And at 12 years old, I watched people go up on stage, and they talked about how they went from rags to riches by creating discipline in their life, in not just their finances, but in their habits and in their relationship with their spouse, winning in every area. And I knew my dream and my vision for my life is to help other people win.
Yeah.
And so in my wealth management firm in Minneapolis, in my wealth management firm in Dallas, in my leadership and coaching company, when I serve at my church, if I'm developing people, I'm winning. So when I think about my life, I think about it in that triangle that Pastor Keith always draws.
Yeah.
And I've got wealth management, I've got leadership and coaching, and I've got the local church.
good.
And those are the three things in my life. And I'm going to spend my life developing people. So 2026, my focus is, as I grow my wealth management firm and grow my leadership and coaching company, that there's people that are in heaven because of me that wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I'll say, can I add one thing to
go
that?
for it. Yeah, go for it.
So the other thing I would say is, if you're a Christian business leader and you're not leading people to Christ, then you're not stewarding the gift.
Ooh, that's good.
And I think there's so many strong business leaders that respond to how they represent Christ so weak. And it's kind of like, well, I just live in a way that I hope people notice.
Yeah.
No one's noticing, dude. Like, or if they do notice, they're not in heaven because they noticed you're a good person.
Yeah.
That's weak. So what I would say is, use your gift to lead people to Christ.
Yeah.
So I have a wealth management firm. My average client is 65 years old. I recently found out that one of my clients had stage 4 cancer. He's been with me for a year. I went to go see him. His name's John. Won't give you his last name. And I walked in and I said, John, just wanted to show up. And I said, are you okay if we just talk? And he goes, yeah. He goes, are my finances in order? I said, yeah, your finances are in order. He goes, well, if you don't mind me asking, what are you doing here? And I said, to be honest, I said, I'm just here as a friend.
Yeah.
And he's like, is my estate planning in order? I said, yeah, we've got your estate planning in order. He goes, what are you doing here? I go, I'm just here as a friend.
Yeah.
And he goes, is there any other reason? And I said, well, I do have one other incentive. There's one other reason I'm here. And I said, I want to talk about, do you know where you're going to spend eternity if you die?
Oh, man.
And even in the moment of going there, knowing that I was going to work in Jesus somehow, I was tempted to just talk about Jesus, but not give him the opportunity to give his life to Jesus.
Wow.
And think about, had he passed away, and all I did was encouraged him how good Jesus is,
Right.
but didn't give him the opportunity, according to Romans 9:10, to make Jesus Lord of his life,
Yeah.
where he could know that he'd be in heaven for eternity.
Yeah.
So I went and I said, can we just talk about, if you're open about it, your relationship with God?
Yeah.
And I said, and this is from John Maxwell, I said, if you don't mind me asking, what does your picture of God look like?
That's good.
And what it does is it opens people up not to talk about religion,
Right.
but to talk about how do they see God.
That's so good.
And they talk about their experiences. They talk about their past. And he just went on, he goes, to be honest, he goes, I see God kind of like an alien.
Yeah.
He's like, I know he's out there, but I don't really know who he is.
Yeah.
He goes, I believed in him and then I got divorced. One of the things I found is a lot of people believe in God until something bad happens.
Yeah.
And then they go, if this happened, then how could God be real?
Yeah.
Man, you live on earth, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And he goes, and then I was a part of the Catholic Church, and when all that stuff happened with the priests and little boys, he's like, I'm out. So I said, has there ever been a time where you felt God cared about you, loved you? He goes, actually, there has been a time. So we talked about it. So I felt it out because I think you got to be spirit-led. So we just talked about God, and I go, hey, John, can I come see you next week? And he laughed. He's like, yeah, why don't you call to see how I'm feeling? He's got stage 4 cancer. Yeah. So I called the next week, and he's like, you can come see me. He goes, but I got moved to hospice. So I said, okay, I'm going to come see you. So I went to go see him. He goes, Trey, what are you doing here? I go, John, I'm just here as a friend. And he's like, no, why are you here? And I said, well, I've got one ulterior motive. I want to talk about, I said it again. I
Yeah.
want to talk about your eternity. Do you know where you're going to spend it forever? And he goes, I think I know. And I said, well, let's talk about, Romans 9:10 that says that you can know for sure that if you make Jesus Christ Lord of your life and you confess it with your mouth, that you're going to spend eternity with him. And so I said, would you be open to praying that with me so that I can leave knowing that I'm going to see you in heaven again?
Yeah.
So good, man.
And he goes, yeah, I'll pray that with you. He goes, so you're going to say it and I'm going to repeat it. I said, I'm going to say it. You're going to repeat it.
Yeah.
So I said it. He repeated it. 2.5 days later, his 27-year-old daughter called me and said my dad passed away.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, here I'm managing $1.5 million for him. And he was only with me for a year. And had I just been a good example of Jesus and I had just loved him and hoped that he caught my kindness,
Yeah.
he would have been in hell probably.
Yeah.
But because I was as bold with my faith as I am with asking for the deal, he's going to spend his life in eternity.
Yeah,
Wow.
man, that's so beautiful.
Dude,
Like,
that's
yeah,
honestly
like seriously, yeah.
so
Like,
good,
thank
dude.
you for sharing that. It's
Wow.
like
It's God thing.
I'm so glad you said that because that speaks to me. Like, I still feel like I am not bold enough yet, and it's like I want to get there, and it's like
Yeah.
that's one of our missions.
Yeah.
To just disciple more of these health and fitness coaches as well too. But in the time that we're doing this, if God has a bigger plan to do something else, then I'm
Yeah.
going to follow that. But I need to step it up
Yeah.
too. So 2026 is
Love
definitely
it.
something I want to do.
Yeah.
And before I ask you the last question, Trey, I just
Yeah.
want to take a moment to just just acknowledge you, man, and just say thank you so much just for this conversation. Like, I know it's like been over
Love
an
it.
hour, which is it's flying by, but it's just
Yeah, thank
flowing.
you guys.
Yeah, it's flowing. This is great. Like, I could talk to you for hours and just,
Yeah.
man, just you're a great just like representation of what a godly driven man is.
Thank
Just
you.
of success, of just obedience, of just
Thank you.
purpose, meaning. So, thank you so much. And
Thank
just
you,
the short time that
Eric.
we've known each other, like I'm super grateful, man, just to get to know you more and just
Thank
like I'm just wishing you nothing but the best in 2026 and further.
I feel the same way about you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks for having
Thank
me
you,
on.
man. Yeah.
New relationship, and
Absolutely,
let's do
man.
more big things
Absolutely.
together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So where can the listeners connect with you? Just check out all the stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, so if you're on social media, on Instagram, I've got all my websites. So in Minneapolis, so TreyCPeterson.com.
Okay.
So if you go Trey, middle initial C, Peterson, I've got all my wealth management stuff, my leadership and coaching stuff. And man, just reach out if I can help anybody in any way.
Yeah.
I might not be the person, but I can connect you to the person. And my goal in life is just to help as many people as people have helped me. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Let's keep growing together. Let's keep getting people aligned with their purpose,
Yep.
aligned with their pastor, aligned
Amen.
with their gifts and talents.
Amen.
And hopefully we get to have you on my show.
Yeah. Amen. I
All right.
love that.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. So guys, go check out Trey. We'll have all that linked up in the podcast notes. But other than that, Trey, thank you so much for your time. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.